these malicious people are after is some political influence. So this is warning of a very targeted campaign. There are two separate campaigns, one by Russia, one by Iran. They're against sort of political figures, journalists. They're seeking information. They're seeking to embarrass people. They're seeking to sow political instability. So it's quite specific. Frankly, most people don't have to worry about it.
I don't know if you're one of those people who wakes up, clicks on your phone and starts to wade through your emails. Well, stop right now. You could be targeted by Russian spear phishers. The National Cybersecurity Centre is warning of attacks. Ciaran Martin is a former chief executive of national cybersecurity and now professor of the Blavatnik School of Government at the University of Oxford. Morning, Ciaran.
Morning.
Now, phishing is one of those phrases, phishing with a PH we're talking about here, that we now read about quite often. Do people fully understand the risk, do you think?
Well, I think part of this advisory issued by the government today is about making sure that the right people understand the risk, because the one thing that I wouldn't want most listeners to do today is not engage with their emails, because what this warning is about is quite specific targeting of politicians, journalists and academics by Russia and Iran for political reasons. So sometimes phishing email is just a bunch of criminals who send out a pretty crude email to hundreds of thousands of people. And if 1% or 0.1% click on it, then they might be able to monetize that, steal some money, steal some personal data. What these malicious people are after is some political influence. So this is warning of a very targeted campaign. There are two separate campaigns, one by Russia, one by Iran. They're against sort of political figures, journalists. They're seeking information. They're seeking to embarrass people. They're seeking to sow political instability. So it's quite specific. Frankly, most people don't have to worry about it. But there's been enough of it going on that the government feels it needs to warn people in the relevant sectors about this quite sophisticated campaign.
So, Asma and I, by some definitions of the term, are journalists. What we're talking about? What sort of thing might they be trying to do? How might we spot it?
Well, again, most of the time when it comes to phishing emails, it's just some random email, maybe somebody pretending to be a company offering you a special offer or something like that. This will be a bit more sophisticated. Firstly, they tend to go for personal emails, not corporate emails, because you may not have the same protections on it. Secondly, they try to build trust, so it won't be a one-off. They will adopt personalities. They may even impersonate somebody they know you know, because if you're a public figure, we could go on your social media, both you and Asma, and we could say, well, who do they interact with? And we could find out something about them. Then we could do a mock-up of them. We could refer to things that you've written or said, and they'd say, and they try and build trust. And then they'd say, in fact, in the warning from the government, there's even a reference to people setting up a Zoom call, but an audio Zoom call, and then saying, oh, could you click on this link to get started? And could you give us some information about it, etc., etc. So part of it in terms of spotting it is just, if you think that this is somebody new who seems to be trying to build trust, but you don't really know them, or if it's somebody pretending to be someone you do know, but they seem to be acting a bit strangely, well, maybe just give them a call and say, hang on, are you really in touch with me, etc., etc. It takes a bit of time. It is a bit of a pain. It does slow you down, but I'm afraid in these sorts of circumstances, it's probably worth doing it.
And have you seen evidence of it working then? Have you seen evidence? Because what's been the outcomes where people have successfully done this?
So that's a really, really interesting point, because sometimes we sort of glorify these cyber hackers and you kind of wonder what they do. There are two different groups, although the government have bracketed them together because their techniques are similar. The Russian people, so they appear to have, although details are sketchy, they appear to have compromised emails of some former senior UK people in politics and security and the civil service who were pro-Brexit a few years ago and were sending around emails to people talking about influencing government ministers and so forth. And they leaked those emails to sort of embarrass and try to sow instability, including emails apparently coming from a former head of MI6. What's interesting about that is that's one of the rare occasions where it becomes public. What I think the government's worried about here is that quite a lot of the activity would be private and invisible. So you would be, for example, in the Iranian case, they're talking about academics in terms of the Middle East and scholars and so forth. And they're talking about sort of sowing distrust, messing up, their ability to have trusted discussions and so forth in a way that will be consistent with Iran's political objectives. So it's a much more subtle and pernicious and kind of invisible type of threat as compared to some of the other cyber threats we see.
So would they be in their emails and therefore be able to read what they're getting sent and then maybe sharing that information with other people? Would they be taking over their emails and sending an email to someone they didn't want to send? Is that something? There's almost they can gain access to your email system.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think they'd be doing two things. One is they're gathering information. I mean, they're spies.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And that information, because of the type of people they're targeting, it will be useful to the governments for whom they work. But then they are sort of messing around with it a little bit from time to time to try and achieve that type of outcome. It's not a sort of physically harmful activity.
No.
It's more designed to sow mistrust, sow dissent, dispute, in line with the objectives of Russia and Iran.
Really interesting stuff. Ciaran, thank you for talking about it this morning.
Thank you.
That's Ciaran Martin, their former Chief Executive of National Cybersecurity Centre, now at the Blavatnik School at Oxford. So if you get an email from me suggesting a Zoom meetup, Asma, it's probably a Russian spy.